Hi, Roma. Thank you so much for being a part of the grand finale of Code Gladiators 2022. And I'm sure you were also excited as much as we are. And to start our conversation with, I would want to actually understand and know that how excited you are. And also, please introduce yourself to our audience and let us know that how excited you are for Code Gladiators finale today.
So, Kriti, any event with it brings in so many butterflies. And while I'm here with you speaking and discussing and talking, I can feel the excitement. This is so awesome. Being virtual, I can feel your energy. And everyone here looking, watching Code Gladiators, do know that Sukriti and her team are doing an amazing job of getting this here. I'm so happy to be on this platform with all of you, talking, chatting, and waiting to hear your comments and everything that comes along with it. I am Roma Nawani Sachdev, and I'm VP Marketing for Publicis Sapient in India. I'm extremely passionate about helping diverse groups, driving inclusion in organizations, and also making sure that it's a safe working place for everyone to come in. So really looking forward, Sukriti, to this conversation with you today.
I am so excited, Roma, because diversity and inclusion, these are two elements that I think everybody is trying to work upon. And we wanted to talk about this because I think the tech professionals, the tech industry wherein we actually try and address this, faces I think, the scarcity of women being here and diversity being addressed. So I'm like looking forward to the insights that you're going to share with us today, and anything and everything that you're going to talk about diversity and change and how actually it matters for all of us today. No matter tech industry or whatever industry we'd be addressing, but diversity and inclusion are two things that the entire world is trying to actually work upon. So let's go ahead. I will shoot my questions to you, and I'm excited to know the answers. All right,
Very
Roma. So tell me, why do you think that more and more businesses from the top levels of leadership, because that's exactly where we see the more scarcity of professionals there, are broadening their business outcomes beyond the profits and putting an emphasis on diversity and inclusion altogether?
Yeah. Sukriti, it's such an important conversation today. So if you pull back from it and you look at where the world is at today, right? If you think about the world, so many of you would have heard the term VUCA, right? Which is how volatile is the world, right? And the last 2 years have shown us that even more, and we've all experienced it, right? Pandemic, we all experienced how change is, what does it mean, what does volatility really mean. So if you think about that as one starting point of our world, of our life, of our space to be in, then you think about businesses, right? All the businesses through this time have looked through how can they be more successful, how can they be more resilient, and in that what comes very important too is how do you reimagine these businesses, right? So as we navigate all of this ambiguity, volatility of the world, then you look at what does transformation really mean in all of this, and therefore technology, and what does reimagining, right? If you look at most of the businesses, it's very important. Like at Publicis Sapient, what we do is we help our clients be more successful in this world by helping them transform, right, digitally. And when we do that, we start to look at tech as a lot of core of what we do. Yeah. And then as you navigate through customer markets, as you navigate through regulatory environments which are changing, as well as if you look through how workforce is changing. So when all of this comes together, we start to look at what does the next look like, right? And when you think about the next, there is always a conversation about what is the new normal, right? And moment you think about that, you say these are such diametrically opposite because it's always the next, right? How do you come to that part of it? In Publicis Sapient, we think about bringing to life through our speed framework, which is strategy, product, engineering, experience, and data, right? When you bring all of this together, you help clients transform, right? That's why we say we are a digital business transformation organization. And to do that, you need a lot of diversity, correct? Without a diverse workforce, it's not really possible to drive change, to look at what next is. And in that frame, if you think about diversity of perspective, is the most important thing to bring to life, right? And that's what organizations look at, and that's what I think for Publicis Sapient, it is one of the most important things for us to stand behind, which is how do we bring in diversity of perspectives. To do that, you have women diversity, you have different communities, you have people with disability, you have LGBTQI, you have minorities. All of this forms what would bring to what can be a diverse perspective, right? So I hope this helps you understand what would it mean for businesses to focus on for today's world, and how does diversity and inclusion play such a critical role in bringing that to fore.
Absolutely, Roma, and I completely agree with you that we have started. It's like a WIP, work in progress for organizations these days. We are trying to make so much effort to bring diversity and inclusion, as you mentioned. It's not just women's participation. It's about addressing all the cadres that exist, be it LGBTQ or be it the people with disability. And I think it's time that we address and we not just call it inclusion, but we actually term it as belonging there, right? We belong to a certain place. So talking about this, please help me understand that how diversity and belongingness actually makes team, any team in any organization more successful.
Yeah, I think such an important term, belongingness, right? Unless you don't belong, then you don't feel a part. So if you think about, we talked about the world is changing earlier, right? And we've all experienced it and felt it deeply in the last 2 years. At this point, if you look at the way the markets are very volatile, and so is talent. There is a high need of getting the right talent in the right place, right? And if you look at another trend that's happening during the pandemic, so many people went back home to different cities, to different towns, right? There was a huge movement there. How do you help all of that movement? People would want to stay there, and how do you make sure that all those people who have taken the decision to be where they are feel part, belong as a part of a community, right? That's a big challenge that most organizations today are dealing with, and that is a conversation that's key in organizations, right? Um, at Publicis Sapient, when we talked about people are at the center of what we do, we make sure that there is what we brought out was flex work. And when you think about flex work, what we said was it's people's choice, right? That's what they've been exercising. How about if you help people think through that and make a choice for themselves to say, do you want to come back to the office? Do you want to come back at your own convenience? Do rotational, that some days it's good for me to work from office and some days it's not. I would want to work from home. For example, I'm in NCR region, and I choose to go to office when I know there are important connections, networking, and I choose to work from home for my evening calls for my global role, right? So there is that mix. Or for people who are working from any city in India, they could work from anywhere they are. So there is all this flexibility which is built into the business model to help people first feel comfortable where they are. And then if you extend it to wherever I am, in whichever format of work that I choose, how do I feel a part of the community, right? That's very important. And as you take that conversation forward, we have something that we feel very close to. It's called business resource group, right? And these groups are around helping build communities. So, for example, we have one for women, which is called Viva, wherein women of different career stages or different needs come together to discuss their challenges, look at what's happening, or for people with disabilities, or people in LGBTQI, or caregivers, right? Or people generational. each organization now has multiple generations working. So how do you bring all those perspectives? How do you do reverse mentoring? Right? All of these drive a two-way conversation, which helps drive belongingness. Another good example of that is um, people are working from different cities, right? So many people work from different. So we have, for example, Hyderabad, Kolkata, any of those cities where there are people working, they come together, and we have something which we started, our business team started, which is called the PS Circle, where people come together not only to discuss work, but actually to discuss authentic stories. They bring together stories of who they are, what they're feeling in that moment, so that there is a connect which is beyond transactional, beyond work, beyond anything. So they feel part of that space. And the other thing is, if you think about diverse workforce, what is also important then too is to say, how do we bring an inclusive environment? That can happen. Diversity is one starting point, but to make that diversity actually function in a way where every single person who comes to the workplace feels a part of it. And that's again a part of belongingness. It's only not connections, but it's also how do I feel in that place, right? So inclusive mindset is one of the key things to make that happen. Does that mean that when I'm coming to work, is there a bias that's playing against me, right? How do we make people more sensitive to the diverse kind of community that is getting built today? Yeah. Also, during the pandemic, right in the middle of pandemic, we launched this program called Spring Returnees, wherein we had people who had been on a break. We encouraged women who were on a break to come back to, whether you were a manager or below, above. We encouraged women, whether they were 1 year out of work or 7 years out of work, to come back. Instead of train and hire, we hired and trained. We handheld them to go through that process, right? So this is what I'm talking about. When you bring in diversity, you start to also think about how do you include, what are the needs, what are the challenges that people face as they join workforces which are diverse, right? Remember, I talked about BRGs. So many different kind of people, they come together. When they come together, how do they work? How do you create an environment of safety? How do you create an environment of inclusion? Are key things that businesses really need to invest in. And that's what we do at Publicis Sapient very well, wherein we drive sensitivity around this, where we drive awareness of this, of the different groups, their needs. And another thing, Sukriti, that happened, and I'm a big beneficiary of that. During our DNI program initiatives, one initiative was take the time out to discuss. Even a starting point was why pronouns? So we had teams just discussing that. So they could bring their thoughts, their challenges, their fears, listen and share. So I think this platform creation, where you can have a dialogue instead of just one-way communication. This community that we are creating, right, only goes forward to bring trust, respect, and therefore leads to belongingness, right? So that's from an individual perspective. And if you look at organization, if you just go a little wider and look at organization, there is an intentional journey for an organization, right? That really helps people come together to navigate this uncomfortable territory of doesn't look like me, doesn't feel like me. So what do I do? How do I do? So organizations have to make that push to drive that understanding so that belongingness can be felt by anyone and everyone in the organization.
Thank you, Roma, for sharing these, activities and the set of, strategies that are in place in Publicis Sapient altogether. It's very interesting that TechGig, we talk about technologies day in and day out. When we host an event, when we are speaking to technology leaders, when we come together for conversations, we talk about how technology is actually enabling all of us with our work, with our responsibilities, and how it's actually trying to minimize the responsibilities and the tasks that are in hand, and how it's enabling the whole process for us. And ironically, here we are talking about that human dialogue, which is at the same time parallelly, of utmost importance. And how critical this is for an ambience when it comes to working professionals, when it comes to creating the right workforce with the right mindset. And I'm sure this is like a two parallel lines running across functionalities that we're trying to address, no matter what industry we're talking about. So thank you so much for that. Last one here. Please share some tips that that organizations can actually think of and can incorporate for better diversity and inclusion, in their organization, and at least can think of it or strategize altogether.
So interesting point that you make. Before I go to tips, my take on the two parallel path is the last 2 years have shown us that people are at the center. Wherever you are, industry you are, our lives have changed dramatically, right? And whichever, like you mentioned, whichever industry you are in tech or you are wherever you are a person that is at the consciousness of the change, right? So lives are center, work is all around it, right? So people and their framing of life has changed. So then if you think about organizations, a few things about what are some of the things that organizations should look at to drive their diversity and inclusion agenda through this time of change. I would say, and I will talk about, and I think foundational stuff, most organizations definitely have to spend time behind. Some are doing it, some are at a higher maturity curve, some are starting the journey. But if you think about it, there are five odd things or six odd things that would come to play as you look at organizations becoming more diverse and actually driving the inclusivity agenda for most people, right? I think inclusive mindset for Publicis Sapient especially is a differentiator, and that is the hard work. When you in organizations or when initiatives are led, programs are created, the success of that is in the entire people population in that company to start to think to include people of different kinds in their conversations, in their work, in their milieu, in the entire setup the way it is, right? So inclusion is huge. And when we were starting to work here in Publicis Sapient around inclusion, it started at the top. We came together and we said, okay, as a leadership team, where are we on our inclusion barometer? And all of us did. So if I ask you, are you inclusive? The answer is always, most people, it would be yes, right? Because we think of ourselves as inclusive. But when we looked through all that and we found what is our inclusive score, where is the world at? There were a lot of surprises as well as aha moments to say, this is what inclusion is. Inclusion is not always to say that is there a common ground, but inclusion is also to look at differences and say, okay, we are okay with those differences, and let's now step forward, understanding each other, bringing in that understanding, and not whitewashing everything in the same way. So we did that at the leadership level. We brought in sensitization around what does inclusion really mean, inclusive mindset in particular mean, so that when we bring in people from diverse backgrounds, when we bring in people from spaces which are different than what we look like, feel like, then there is a better understanding and a better belongingness to the point that we spoke about earlier in the organization. Also, I think what is really important is, Sukriti, that we start to create an ecosystem around it, right? One person, one organization driving the agenda will only work at a certain quantum. To accelerate, to do that, what Publicis Sapient we think about is how do you create this ecosystem? We work with our suppliers, we work with our ecosystem to make sure that there are these conversations, that they have practices and policies too. And the other is that we have some things at a very high maturity level. Then you start to think about how do I pay it forward how do you make sure that your best practices are shared across in the world in a way, right? And this is one such platform for us to do so. So we work with the clients, we work with different organizations like Humsafar organization or MIST organization or Complete or any of these, and I think, Gift Tables, yeah, that was a great organization we worked with to share what we have received and to make sure that there is a lot of understanding of what we do and what we take to the world. So I think this creating of this environment, creating of giving back, paying it forward is a great way for us to take our practices and share our practices in the world to create this environment. Now, if you think about these practices as unique practices, the others are more foundational. What are the systems? What are the processes? We talked about legal systems are changing, right? So how do you think about that in this world of tech? How does, GDPR, everything? It's not only now to Europe. So many people across the world are talking about that, right? So how do you make sure there is an understanding of that, right? So foundations of systems, of processes, of bringing in understanding of different groups, all of this needs to be done. And on the higher level of bringing in conversations and around inclusive mindset, and also the shift from being not only equal, but to drive a conversation around equitable. So I think all of these things are for organizations to look at, to think about, and for definitely, and I think that is core of what we do. We recently, Sukriti talked about people. People are individuals, people as people and not labels, right? So I would love to leave you and everyone here at Code Gladiators with this thought that when you think about people, they are people at the core. There are differences. Accepting of that differences is how we will make progress. And definitely, Sukriti, do share with the team here about people and they're not labels.
Thank you so much, Roma. I think I had a great time with this conversation that I had with you. The elements, the tips, and the whole foundation that we've spoken of, diversity and inclusion, we will impart a lot of awareness to our audience tonight. So thank you so much for being here with us at the grand finale of Code Gladiators 2022, Roma. We will now move to the live event after this video that Roma is actually talking about and she would want all of us to see.
Chowmin. Momos.
छक्का
50-50. ये सिग्नल वाले ऑफिस में काम करेंगे?
That's a long gap in your resume. Incompetent.
कलुई.
मीर जात
Mr. Dictator.
This is the big boys club. ये क्या काम करेगा? अपाहिज.
Does the color of my skin decide how much respect I deserve? I'm tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own country.
My sexuality, how I choose to express it, is my business. You can only see my professional success, not my constant battle with anxiety and stress.
I'm educated, smart, and contributing to the society. But all you care about is my gender.
Why does my last name have to decide my profession?
I took a break in my career, not a break from my dreams and my abilities.
I wish for a world where people are defined by their abilities.
I deserve better. I deserve to have dignity.
I am unique.
I matter.
Just like you.
Just like you.
Just like you. Just like you.